Welcome back to the Wet Dreams podcast. I'm your host, Jose Gonzalez. I work with primarily men with out of control sexual behavior. And this is Brad.
I'm Dr. Brad Hinman, and I also work, I'm a therapist, sex therapist, and I work primarily with men with out of control sexual behavior as well. I do see a fair amount of couples as well to kind of restore their relationship from one of them having out of control sexual behavior as well.
Today we're kind of continuing one of our other episodes about pornography and porn as entertainment. How we talked about how porn is meant for entertainment, and the porn industry themselves will say that. But so often, guys, whether we realize or not, we use that as, well, a lot of people do, but many guys use that as their education. So they think certain things have to happen in the real life bedroom that happens in porn, or they do certain acts thinking that that's like normal because they see it in porn or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we started out that conversation. It was too big of a topic. I'm sure we'll have a third and a fourth episode, as well. But at least we'll continue with that as a second episode. And today we're going to be focusing a little bit more on those myths and those things that we as guys believe about porn. And again, my thing is, for me, it's not necessarily vilifying porn. It's knowing which box to put it in, or it's porn literacy, knowing that this isn't real and knowing what is real. So it's not necessarily, for me, it's not porn that's the issue. Is what we take from it, what we do with the porn, that then can be problematic for people. So anyways, yeah, what are some thoughts just generally and kind of early?
Yeah, I agree with you that it's not necessarily porn is the issue. Porn is designed to be entertainment. It's not designed to be educational. But unfortunately, lots of people use it for educational purposes. Mm-hmm. Porn teaches it because it's entertainment. It's exaggerated, and so that's the danger of looking at something compulsively. Because it's not realistic, and then your brain gets kind of programmed to think of it as that is mm-hmm. reality, right? Like gangbangs, for instance, right? Like thinking that all women like gangbangs, right? It's that is not necessarily something that all women would like,
mm-hmm. Right?
And so you should probably ask them first if that's something that they're going to be into. But you may be surprised at how few will actually take that on as something they want to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Bukkake is another thing that you should probably ask your partner before you do that.
Right. And bukkake, just to verify,
it's where the male ejaculates on the face, right? And so that also something that may not be something that somebody would want to have done to them. Mm-hmm. But if they do, like if you ask and you get permission, consent, that's wonderful, right? But you should not think that everybody likes it. Like another thing that porn teaches is that no means yes, no means ask mm-hmm. again, no means force me to have sex, and so that's also something that's dangerous, right? Because if a person says no and you go ahead and force them to have sex, then that's assault, right? And so then now you're into legal problems mm-hmm. because of something you saw in porn, and porn normalized that, and you thought that everybody would be into that, but
mm-hmm.
they're not.
Mm-hmm. And that's a super important conversation. I think, like, you have the extreme examples of that, of like forcibly raping someone, but I feel like there's also the subtleties of you just doing things that they don't like, your partner doesn't like, or like trying anal, for example, and and your partner doesn't like that. It's not necessarily rape, or it's not necessarily sexual assault, but it's not you being an attentive lover, or you being mm-hmm. open to your partner's experience or whatever. I think that can also have a very strong impact, like the subtleties of like you just kind of being self-centered and doing things that you're like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna go in her butt. You know what I mean? Like without actually talking, without actually feeling the vibe, without actually being present as much as you should. You know.
Well, and I think a lot of people don't ask because they don't want no to be the answer, right? Like they don't want to be rejected, and so. But it would be better to ask and be rejected than to not ask and just force somebody to do it when they don't know that that's what you're going to do and didn't give you permission to do that. That's a whole different type of rejection then, you know, because then somebody's going to get really mad, and then they could break up with you, or they could, you know, not want to participate in sexual activity with you anymore. And so, I mean, how would you feel, right? Like, how would you feel if somebody penetrated you without your permission? You know, so we have to kind of use common sense, and like consent is a big thing. Like, did you guys talk about that? Did you agree to that ahead of time? You know, it doesn't take the pleasure out of sex to ask for consent. It can actually add to the pleasure of sex. So I think that's consent is a good thing.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, along with that, I feel like it's not to say that you're a bad person if you're forcibly assaulting someone, then you're not the greatest person. But in the more subtle examples of like not being as attentive or whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad person. It's that you're just, these are the images, these are the messages you've received, and you're just playing that out without a kind of like a zombie. I think, you know, you're just kind of taking that message and rotely bringing it back and just doing what you see, you know. So it's, you know, I don't think it's to say that people are their intentions, I suppose.
Right.
But it's like an awareness piece of like, okay, which ways are you not being as aware as you should be, you know?
Right. I agree with that. I don't think people are necessarily bad people. I mean, there are some bad people,
right?
But,
for sure.
I don't think the majority of people are necessarily bad. It's you know, if you don't know, you don't know, right? And so that's what we're doing, is we're trying to teach people so that they know. And so, you know, I think to me, it would always be better to err on the side of communication, right? And increase communication, and getting consent for that. Because like we said at the beginning, porn isn't a good teacher, right? And so if all of your sexual experience is wrapped up in porn, it's going to be very unrealistic and exaggerated, and that's not a good teacher, right? And so it would be way better to ask your partner what they're into, what they want to experience. You may be surprised if you have that conversation, and so of what people are into. And so, you know, if you do get that agreement ahead of time, then explore each other and you know, figure out what is pleasurable and what's not pleasurable, and then communicate afterwards, right? Like, was that pleasurable for you? So it's not a matter of people being good or bad. It's a matter of communication and lack of communication, or poor communication.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So what are some of the, you know, myths that you've heard, or not? Yeah, myths for sure. But what are some of the incorrect things that you've heard and with our guys talking about, like specifically messages they've gotten from porn, acting out? You know what I mean? What are some myths that you've heard?
Yeah, a super common myth is that all women orgasm through penetration alone. And so, for example, during sex, then every woman orgasms every time that they have sex. And if they don't orgasm, then that means the male is doing something wrong, right? And so, and actually through research, only about a third of women orgasm through penile penetration alone. And so it's actually a great majority of women do not orgasm through penetration of a penis, by a penis. And so that's a myth that has been perpetuated through porn. And it is kind of a dangerous myth because there's going to be pressure from the male to the female in heterosexual sex for her to orgasm every time, right? And then that's where the idea of women faking orgasm comes from, because if they're under that pressure, then they're just going to fake an orgasm so that the male leaves them alone,
right?
And stops pressuring. Did you orgasm yet? Did you orgasm yet?
Yeah.
And so she's just going to fake it so that the pressure stops.
Yeah.
So that's a super common one. And so that is not to say that women can't orgasm. So if there's foreplay, if there's digital stimulation or stimulation by a toy, and then penile penetration, then they can orgasm easier from that. It takes women much longer to orgasm than it does men. And the situation has to be, whenever someone's being penetrated, that person has to, it takes that person longer, right, to get in the space, to allow that, and also to be sexually stimulated by that. It's logical if you think about it.
Right.
So the person being penetrated is in a much more vulnerable position. And they could be more tense, right? Their muscles could tense up because they're going to get penetrated. Again, sexual communication, but also sexual stimulation, non-penetrative sexual stimulation, but then penetration with a toy perhaps or digitally, and then the penis. Then you have much more likelihood of orgasm.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and it's again directly back related to pornography. This idea that there's cuts throughout the time when they're filming pornography. Like the end result of what you have is like the encounter starts. There's like a few positions. I mean, depending on what it is, boom, orgasm, facial, whatever, and it's very like A-B done. You're getting to that point, but that then gives that impression or give that idea of like, okay, well, it should be pretty straightforward process. You get aroused and you get excited and then you orgasm. You know what I mean? But the reality of it is, like you're saying, there's steps involved. There's an up and down of stimulation or pleasure that's happening. Sometimes it wanes and sometimes it goes back up. It's not like a linear process of, I just penetrate for 10 minutes. That's probably a long time. Anyways, I just penetrate for 10 minutes and then she's going to orgasm. You know what I mean? Like that's the impression or that's the message you get, our guys get, it seems.
Yep. Yeah. And it is another sort of error message, I suppose, from pornography, that, and also like try harder, or, thrust harder or deeper. And that's going to help her to orgasm. And perhaps, but perhaps not, right? And also, there's more likelihood of pain if you continually thrust harder and deeper. That could result in pain, which is sort of not conducive to orgasm.
Right. There's nothing that stops an orgasm more if you're not into that type of thing than pain.
Right. Right. So there's a lot of myths. And actually, orgasming outside of your partner. So like we talked about, the ejaculating on the face and all that kind of stuff. That actually started in porn, because people, when porn was first being manufactured back in the day, there was doubt by the consumers of porn that the people were actually having sex. And so they would start ejaculating outside of the body, so that you could see the ejaculate. They called that the money shot, right? And so they were doing that because to prove that they were actually having sex.
Right.
So this was not a pleasure thing.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I want you to come on my face. It was you need to come outside of the body so that the consumer knows that you're actually ejaculating.
Right. That's so interesting. I actually didn't know that. That's kind of wild. Right. So that's another example necessarily, like it wasn't necessarily created, or its initial intended use wasn't necessarily a pleasure thing.
Right.
Or it wasn't like feels good, which, I mean, I'm sure there's throughout porn experience, it feels good, but it's just interesting, like that particular thing wasn't necessarily a pleasure thing. So
right.
it's
all about
funny.
the money.
Yeah, it's all about the money. The money shot. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some other? I mean, one thing I wrote too, anal sex. That's another big thing that happens often in pornography, but I don't actually know. I don't know if you know the statistic, but of the percentage of people that are interested in anal sex. I'm not sure.
I don't know off the top of my head. I could find it, but it is increasing. I've heard through research that anal sex is gaining in popularity. For one reason, you can't get pregnant through anal sex, and also that orifice is tighter, and so which can increase pleasure, right? The muscles, there's stronger muscles through the anus than there is in the vagina. There's still muscles in the vagina. Don't don't rip me apart. Been very strong muscles. They they help push out a baby, but the enclosure itself is tighter. That's people describe. That's one of the things they describe in research. And so, anal sex is gaining in popularity. You do need lots of lubrication. Your penis needs to be, you need to have a stronger erection to penetrate anally because of what I just said. And so, if you communicate with your partner and they're open to trying that, that's something for you to try. There's lots of preparation that needs to go into that. Because it can be messy.
Sure.
And so, but with the right preparation and the right communication, that can be something that can be pleasurable for both partners. Yeah.
And according to, I kind of looked it up, according to this study by the National HIV Behavioral Surveillance Group, study group, 36% of women and 44% of men aged 25 to 44 enjoy or prefer, or it doesn't say prefer, but enjoy anal intercourse. So yeah, I mean, again, it's, but compare that to the percentage of, if you look on porn videos, the amount of porn videos, the percentage of porn videos that have anal sex in it, it's far. I would venture to say far more than that, maybe double.
Right,
probably. What I mean? Like more like 60% of them.
Right.
Again, like not necessarily. Again, the point isn't that anal sex is bad. The point is this unrealistic expectation of like it feels like or it seems like the majority of the people like anal sex based on the videos you watch. And that's not a good place to put your assumption on,
Right. Well, and I think that's the reason it's more common in porn is because it is kind of wild or kinky or out there, right? And so, or extreme, right? The porn industry wants to show you things that are exciting. And so, if anal sex is more exciting to show, then that's what they're going to show, right? Because it's going to, whatever's going to draw consumers, and then you're more likely to spend money, and then they make money. So
right, exactly. What are some other myths that you can think of or have heard? Any other thoughts?
Like spanking and hair pulling,
the rough, rough stuff,
and actually that's one of the differentiations in pornography. Is that's hardcore if there's violence, quote unquote violence in it, like spanking or hair pulling and stuff like that. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here. Communication is key because some people are into that.
Yep, 100%.
I'm also like light choking, not choking enough to make the person pass out or die, obviously. But so choking, spanking, hair pulling. Ask your partner. Perhaps not in the middle of sex is a good time to ask that question. But perhaps when you're, taking a walk on the beach, when it's just the two of you, start having that conversation.
Right.
Hey, what about some hair pulling? Is that okay? And so if you get consent for that, then that's awesome. But if you don't get consent, that's probably not the time to try it out, is during sex, because you're probably not going to get a good reaction to that. Because normally hair pulling or spanking is not, our experiences of that so far probably has not been pleasurable, right? So if you got spanked as a child, that was probably not a pleasurable memory for you.
Yeah.
Some people it is, but
right.
Most people it's not.
Yeah.
And so you should probably get consent for that. And if you do get consent, then that's a wonderful thing to experience. But as you said with some other myths, I think porn shows that much more common than what it is in real life, between real people having sex. But I mean, so the question is, well, why does porn show that? Because it makes money, right? Like it's again out there. It's extreme. It's different, and so that's what's going to draw viewers. Is that kind of behavior?
Yeah, for sure. And another one that comes to my mind is female ejaculation or squirting. I don't know what the percentage, but that's another pretty common thing in porn. Yeah,
and there's mixed results with female ejaculation or squirting. There are lots of sex therapists and lots of medical doctors that will tell you that there is no ejaculate when females orgasm. There is nothing to squirt, and so there's some research that shows that that's actually urine that's coming out. That if a female squirts, or if you see that in porn, that they're actually releasing urine. But there is no, like, males produce ejaculate and you can see it. And females do not. Like there's nothing, there's no structure that produces female semen, right? Right. And so like there's no place for that to come from. Right. Other than the bladder. And so, like I said, there's some mixed debate about that. Some people say that that's impossible. Other people say, like, because they've seen it in porn, something being produced, then that's probably urine, right? Which may not be exciting to people. Right. It's like, that myth being busted may not be exciting to people. But if you are a firm believer that women can ejaculate and that produce something, that's awesome. I'm not here to tell you necessarily that you're wrong. I'm just telling you research doesn't bear that out completely, because there is no physical structure in the female anatomy. Men have testicles, and semen is produced through the testicles and released through the penis. Females do not have any structures like that. Right. And so, porn can show a lot of things. Right. It's commercially produced video. And we've seen humans dressed as spiders jumping around on buildings, and we see that. Does that make it true? Maybe not. Right. Exactly. So it's that is a hotly contested topic.
Well, I think the with all of these things, the conclusion or the bigger point is like what's individual to the person or to the couple or to whatever, whether that's spanking, whether that's you want someone to make you squirt, whether that's rough play, whatever. Like the point is, and specifically to our guys, I think the point is finding out what your partner likes. Period. Like it doesn't matter. There's not one size cookie cutter. Although porn shows this image or this message as a cookie cutter thing, that's not real life. So what's your partner's enjoyable thing? What are you and your partner into? Out of those things, it may not be any of those things. It might be all of those things. It doesn't matter. The point is, what is your partner into?
Right. And we're not like that. Just reminds me, you've touched on this a couple of times, like by saying that doesn't make a person bad. Like I'm not, we are not attaching value to any of this stuff. Like we're not attaching morality or ethics or whatever. Maybe ethics by saying don't sexually assault people, but
right, sure.
we're not attaching morality to your viewing porn or these certain activities, squirting or anal sex or stuff like that. We're not attaching moral value to that. That's up to you and your partner. What I'm saying, and what I feel like you agree to, is like communicate about that. Ask for permission. Are you into that? Did you enjoy that? Ask questions like that. And then if you get mutual agreement, then go for it. Do it. Right? If it's pleasurable for both of you.
Exactly. Right. The issue is just taking that formula that you see and just throwing it onto your sex life, throwing it onto your relationships. Like, that's not cool. Like, that's not helpful for you.
Right.
Especially, again, specifically the guys that we see, guys with out of control sexual behavior, is that lack of exploration, or the lack of talking about the needs, or talking about, like, it's often just, this is what I see, so I'm gonna do it. This is what I do because I don't have anything else. I don't have any other tools. Like, this is what I know about sex and anything revolving sex. You know what I mean?
Yep. Like, another common thing in pornography is group sex. So sex with more than one partner at a time. That's also way more common in pornography than what I think it is in real life. And so, but again, if you're into threesomes or more than three, anything more than two, ask your partner. Again, you may be surprised what your partner says if you ask them that question. So the answer, in other words, won't always necessarily be no. So it could be yes if you ask. But you need to, before you invite more than your partner into the room, you probably need permission for that.
Right.
So that it doesn't go badly for you.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. It's that communication piece. Another one that came to my mind that I think was definitely porn related, to a person that I had they were engaged in, like, putting things in their urethra, because their which is where the pee comes out, for people that don't know, but their goal in that was to be able to, quote unquote, shoot across the room, like ejaculate across the room, like they see in pornography, which that's problematic on several levels of, that's not reality necessarily, shooting across the room. And then also, putting things in your urethra isn't the way to strengthen orgasms or erections. Is actually more the pelvic floor type of stuff. But so it's like a double negative. But again, that was a very, very porn related message that he got. Like, I want to squirt across the room, and I think this is gonna help it. I mean, I think he found some pleasure out of it still, regardless, but it wasn't giving the intended goal or consequence that he wanted it to give. So that's an interesting one that I came across. But
that's called sounding. That is something that men engage in. Some men, again, the minority of men, would engage in that. Again, you need some preparation there. You need lots of lubrication, because your body necessarily is not designed for penetration through the penis, into the penis, right? And so
sterility or sterile equipment, perhaps, not just like a pen or pencil.
Right, exactly. Don't just grab something and stick it in there. Because then you're going to get a urinary tract infection, which can be painful. It is painful. And so if that's something that you want to do, that's great, as long as you do preparation to protect yourself. But that's not going to help you ejaculate further. That is a pelvic floor thing, like you said. Strengthening those muscles, conditioning those muscles, like with anything. Like, if I worked out my arm muscles, I can throw a baseball farther, right? If I work out my pelvic floor muscles, then I can squirt further, right? Ejaculate further. And so, but also over time, right, as men age, you will not be able to ejaculate as far as you could when you were 17, 18, 19 years old. And so every year after that, it's going to decrease.
Right.
And so that's the same as with everything else. I can throw a baseball less far now than I could when I was 18 or 19. Right. And so, over time, our muscles decondition themselves and we get weaker. No man likes to hear that word.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Again, it's the whole the individual experience is the big thing. What works for you and or your partner, or what things are you into because it's pleasurable, and then how are you doing it in a safe way? Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So speaking of that, yes, that's what we're saying. That brings up oral sex, right? That oral sex can be pleasurable for both the male and the female, right? But again, that should be something that's discussed. It is a myth that all women enjoy giving oral sex. I think that one thing that they tell us in research is that women do, the part of oral sex that they do like is the power and control, right? That they feel powerful when they're giving oral sex to a male, because he then is in her control, right? And so maybe not a sexy thing to talk about, right? But that's what they tell us in research.
Sure.
And so it isn't necessarily true that all women love to give oral sex to a man. Right. That part is a myth.
Right. Or that they enjoy the taste, like specifically.
Exactly.
Not necessarily.
Exactly. If you think about it, it's kind of weird to put...
Sure, both directions. It's kind of like interesting.
To put a waste evacuation tube into your mouth. And so, so some people are grossed out by that. And so,
which is fine.
Right, and that's fine. And it's fine that... it feels pleasurable as a male. And so, but you need to ask someone for permission. And when I say ask, I don't mean coerce, right?
Please, but,
right.
But.
Right. And so, just to ask if that's something that your partner wants to engage in. And sure, you can tell them how pleasurable that is for you, but that's still their choice, right? And they shouldn't be coerced or guilted into doing that.
Yep.
Because, like you said, that some people don't like the taste. Some people don't like the concept of having something that's designed to evacuate waste. And so I don't know, but perhaps it's because women have two different orifices, right? One to expel waste and one to accept penetration. And so, but males only have one. And so... I think sometimes that weirds women out.
It's maybe too close for comfort or something. That's interesting, for sure.
And so it's definitely something that should be talked about before you're engaging into it. Oral sex is becoming more common in the last, let's say, 10 years. It's becoming... more and more common, almost more common than even kissing. And so, people feel like kissing is too intimate, but oral sex is not too intimate, which is interesting to me.
Yeah.
But
maybe we'll do an episode on that.
Yeah. And so, to me, oral sex, the concept of oral sex is a more intimate concept than kissing is to me.
Right.
But that's, perhaps an age or generational thing.
Right. Sure.
And so, again, that's fine.
And I could see that.
If you don't want to kiss, that's fine.
Right. I could see that the level of intimacy in some ways with kissing, or I guess the level of connection needed to be able to kiss versus to give someone oral sex. I don't know. Yeah. Right. But I can see both sides of it. Yeah.
Maybe it's an eye thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's true. Yeah. Again, but the point to going back again is that doesn't necessarily have to be a prerequisite. Giving a blowjob or going down on someone doesn't have to be a prerequisite to a good sexual encounter or a good sexual experience, as porn would potentially lead you to believe that that's just a prerequisite. That's what happens. Oral sex, boom, boom, boom,
Yep.
Which it could.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be.
Right.
It's the thing.
It is one way of, like, I think what you're talking about there is like foreplay, right? Or getting the person ready or getting them wet. That is one way to do that. There are other ways to do that. Certainly if your partner doesn't want to engage in that, or, isn't ready or not used to that or whatever, there are other ways to get to that place, right? And so, the lube is great to get a person so they're ready to penetrate or to get penetrated.
Right. Yeah. And there's ways to, again, sound like a broken record, is what you and your partner enjoy. Like if the one partner isn't the hugest fan of oral but would like to give their partner oral sex, sometimes there's tools for that, or like flavored lube or whatever. Like that's cool too. Again, it's what you and your partner decide that works for you and works best for your relationship and your pleasure. It's fine, but do it because you want to do it and not because of a message that you're receiving or from another person is telling you that this is how you should do it. You know what I mean? That's my thing. Like, do it how you would not want to do it.
Right.
For you.
Right. And there are mouth condoms that you can, there's devices that you can put in your mouth if you're giving oral sex to somebody, so their fluids don't mix. It's also a protective factor for sexually transmitted infections as well. But so there are devices to help you with that, if that's something that you want to try, but you don't have to.
Right, exactly. That's the point. I think, and this one was a little bit of a shorter episode, but I think, and the question is, first, any other myths that come to mind before we kind of wind down?
Probably not. Not that I can think of right now.
Yeah, I think we probably hit all of them. I mean, if there's any other myths that people want to share or comment, that's cool too. But as we wrap up, my mind goes to what's the message that you want our guys to take from this episode. Like, so for me, again, I go back to that individuality thing, is individuality and communication, finding what works for you, finding what works for your partner the best, and again, like I said, for what you want it to be and not for what you think it should be. Like, does this feel good to you? Does it feel good because it actually feels good for your body, or does it feel good because you think it should feel good? Right. Am I going down on her because I think I don't like it, but I think she would like it? Like, okay. Or am I doing it because I enjoy it and I'm okay with her having the pleasure of that? Whatever it is. Am I trying to do anal because this is what porn tells me? Or is that a genuine curiosity that you've discussed with your partner and kind of planned it out and prepared for it? All those things. I just feel like it's the autonomy piece, and that's what we teach all our clients, but especially our guys, like, doing this for you, and what are your needs and what are your wants, and how does that align with your partner's needs and want, and having that conversation. So anyways, that's what I would leave. How about you?
Yeah. Do you like it? Did you enjoy it? Do you want to do that again? Does your partner like it? Do they enjoy it? Do they want to do it again?
Exactly.
So communication is great. Consent is also great. So that's another takeaway I think that people should take from this is get permission, right? And also when you transition from one sexual activity to another sexual activity, you should get consent again, right? Is it okay if we change to this? And so, people balk at that a little bit when I say that to my clients, but do I have to ask permission for everything? Yes. Yes, you do. because it's and over time you're going to get to know your partner. You're gonna understand them better if you get permission. And then after sex, I think it'd be great if people would say, "Did you like that? Did you enjoy that? Did you what do you want to do again? What do you not want to do again?" Right? Like what was that like for you? I think we should ask that question because I don't think I that's my wish for all couples, is that they would communicate more about stuff like that. Right? What did you like? What did you not like? What do you want to do again? What do you not want to do again? Because it doesn't necessarily mean it hurts. It just that I really wasn't into that. Let's not do that again. Right? And that may not mean forever, but let's just not do this the next time. Right. Let's try something else the next time.
Exactly.
So, consent and communication, I think, are the two things that hopefully people took away from this.
Yeah, but I hope so too, for sure. And obviously, if there are other questions, as we get into this, my hope is that we get engagement and questions, because I know there's guys out there. I mean, we get the questions in session, the questions they're afraid to ask, and for every question that I get from an individual client, I know there's 12 more questions that they have, but other people have as well. So I think that's part of it. I want it to be a place where people can engage. And obviously, you guys, if you have any questions, feel free to drop it to us, and check out our socials, Facebook, our website, HinmanCounselingServices.com, all that good stuff. Any other thoughts before we wrap up this episode? On to the next one?
No, I think we did it.
We did it again. Sounds good. Here's just a tip. Have you realized that pornography is a problem for you? Here are some quick initial strategies to use to create some distance from the behavior. 1. Put up barriers. The goal is to increase the time between when you have urges to when you use the behavior. Some examples are monitoring software for your devices, a trusted accountability partner, or even charging your phone in a separate room at night. 2. Identify triggers. Ask yourself, why am I engaging in this behavior at this time? Is it because I'm tired, lonely, bored, etc.? 3. More coping skills. We usually tell our guys you should create 5 or more healthy coping skills for each trigger that you can engage in other than pornography. 4. Seek professional help. If all else fails, seek out a counselor or therapist that specializes in problematic sexual behavior or out-of-control sexual behavior. The Wet Dreams podcast and any content posted is intended for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes only. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional, diagnosis, or treatment. Listeners should not disregard or delay in obtaining a medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have, and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.